So you come from work exhausted, mentally drained, and immediately face the chaos of dinner, homework, bath time. Everything feels like a race, and you have the feeling that you're all the time going to lose. And the only thing that goes through your head all day is that you've lost patience yet again, you raised your voice yet again, and somehow you didn't measure up to some invisible bar somebody set. Though you are doing everything right on paper, inside you feel hollow and you feel that you're failing day in and day out. And today we're talking about this and what's really going on behind the surface. And let me ask you something. Do you measure yourself to this invisible checklist of, feeding the healthy meals, taking them to school on time, helping them with the work, bath time, bedtime, a healthy routine, a very present parent, very little screen time, none if possible. And yet, at the end of the day, you collapse in the bed, and the only thing you can think of is that you've yelled, that maybe you didn't have enough patience, that you should have been more present. The thing is that we are all fallen into this formula, believe it or not. If we do all the right things, we will produce these perfect kids. Maybe not even perfect, but well adjusted, well disciplined. And the painful truth is, you're chasing a ghost, you're chasing something that doesn't really exist. The checklist that we are measuring ourselves against, it doesn't account for the emotional labor, the invisible things, the soul draining work that nobody sees. The whole mental load of motherhood is constant and it's heavy and it's a burden because oftentimes it goes unseen and it can feel very isolating. Not to mention that we're comparing ourselves with things we now see on social media, but we forget that what we see on social media is a very curated, edited, and impossible thing to achieve. No two mothers have the same lifestyle, no two mothers had the same past, and no two mothers react in the same way to the same problem. Therefore, comparing yourself to other people is not a good idea. It just adds up to the guilt and the mental labor and the constant shame that we're putting ourselves through. So you get everything done and you still feel like you failed because no one taught you that doing everything right on the outside doesn't fit with the emptiness that you're going to feel inside. It's a void we are constantly trying to fill. And let me paint a slower picture where you remember the pediatrician appointment, the signing the form for their trips, you know the location of every missing shoe, you're planning the meals and you're managing the meltdowns and still trying to get everybody to bed on time. You feel the tension in everybody, and because you're also absorbing the emotion of everybody else while simultaneously pushing your own needs aside. And then when you're not physically doing something, your mind is still running the list, the reminders, the unspoken responsibilities. Even when you do get the opportunity to relax and breathe for a moment, it's still not without guilt because of everything you should be doing. And that's what us therapists call the invisible mental load. It's all the unnoticed, incomprehensible things, all the physical and mental clutter, all the emotional labor that mothers undertake to keep the household functioning, all the battles that we're choosing to not do because we want to avoid yet another meltdown, because we are too tired, so we break the rule and we let them have the extra chocolate cookie and, one more cartoon. This burden can lead to exhaustion, burned out, and feeling that you're really an underproductive, and failing as a mother. The hardest part in all of this is that many mothers say that they feel unseen, not because of lack of love, but because their labor goes unnoticed. Your partner sees a clean kitchen, your kids see that their favorite snack is in the pantry, but nobody sees the mental marathon you run to make everything happen. It's not because you're weak, it's because you're carrying too much. And a lot of it is invisible and it goes for too long. This is where the disconnect happens between what you are doing and what everybody else is seeing. There's this feeling of a failure. And, you know, you wanted to live, you had a life before all of this happened. And at times you might feel like that life was taken away from you. And it's just not fair. It's not fair to watch everybody else going on and on with their business while you're left somehow behind. And that's the trap the society set up for us. We got the pressure of now, or the messaging, or the achieving of our dreams. Do we go after the things that we want, or do we go with what society expects us to do? You can be whatever you want to be, but you also have to juggle everything on your own. And then when you enter into motherhood and the reality of the brick wall hits, it's really, you know, us women, we are viewed as the ones who should be at home taking care of our kids and helping them and raising them. And in that message, there's an underline of you have to sacrifice yourself entirely. And that's not really what motherhood is about, because you're not sending your children a good and a healthy example. What your children see is someone who's constantly catering, but disconnected from her own needs. And we kind of become this emptiness and we run on autopilot most of the time because we're so exhausted. So on one side, we're being told that we can have it all, and then we are shamed when we cannot do it all on our own. And we're shamed when we're asking for help, and we're shamed when we're asking for support. We're shamed if we take some time for ourselves. A recent parent told me she was shamed because she was teaching her children how to cook. And some people found that very odd. Like, you're too lazy to make them breakfast. They have to do it for themselves. So, the world tells you to be a CEO, and then Pinterest tells you the perfect mom. You go on Instagram and you have these perfect pictures of mothers, you know, looking gorgeous. Everywhere you look, there's a different version of how motherhood should be and how motherhood should feel. And no matter how much you try, your house is a mess. You never get the outfit right. And it feels like you can't anymore, like you're no longer human. Make everything from scratch. You don't have time to brush your hair some days. And maybe you want to be like those moms on TikTok, making everything for their kids, and everything seems easy and achievable. When you see that and you see that you cannot measure up, You feel like a bad mom. You feel like you could have done more and you could have tried harder. So I want you to step back from all of that because the standards are impossible and the standards are contradictory and they were never ever designed to help us and to improve our life in any way. They're there just to add more shame. Across the narratives, themes of guilt and role overload and emotional invisibility, the perfect motherhood is sold to us, but you're not failing motherhood, okay? Motherhood, as it has been sold to us, is failing you. There's nothing wrong with you. What's wrong is all these things that we're being sold to. So here's the question. Why does meeting every need still leaves us hollow? Because deep down, we know something is off. And deep down, you know that you're meeting everybody's needs but your own. And that hurts. I know that hurts. We know you're snapping at your kids, not because you're a bad mom, but because you're depleted. You're running on empty. You just want a breath of fresh air, a peace, a moment for you, not because you're selfish, but because you need to recharge. You need to fill your own cup. It's often when they are running on empty and exhausted and resentful, or we start to question if we're doing everything right, and then the guilt follows through. You just couldn't hold it together anymore and had the meltdown right in front of your children, and then you still feel guilty, and you use that as proof that you're a bad mom. It's not proof that you're a bad mom, it's simply proof that you're human. It's proof that you're trying to pour from a cup that has been empty for months, maybe for years. And no amount of checking boxes will fill that cup because what you need isn't another productivity hack. What you need is emotional rest. You need to be seen. The first step is to acknowledge that emotional labor exists. Partners and family members must understand the depth of this work and validate it. So here's the kicker. Even if no one else sees it yet, you can start seeing it. You can start naming it. I'm not lazy. I'm emotionally exhausted. I am not a bad mom. I'm carrying an invisible load. I'm not failing. The system is broken. I at times simply tell my kids overload. That's our safe word. When they come to me with way too many questions, I simply say, overload, give mom a minute, let me reset so I can handle all of this. Because if you're throwing it all on me, it's way too much. And I am also fortunate enough that my children are a bit bigger. They're past the toddler stage. They're school now. So we have a different conversation with them. But I did do my best raising them to kind of tell them that at times mom is overwhelmed and we need to take it slow. As a mom, you might feel a bit guilty to tell your children that. And I know teaching patience requires a lot of patience, but it's just, I think, part of the deal. So, what do we do with all this? First, you stop measuring your worth with a checklist. Um, Move from this deficit based mindset to a strength mindset based on more confidence and joy? What if instead of asking, did I do enough today, you ask, did I show up today even when it was hard? Did I show up today even when it was hard? Because you did. And you should get credit for that. And you should be happy and proud of yourself for that. If you're doing your best to be the best mom in that moment, that's all you can do. And being imperfect doesn't make you a failure as a mom. Second thing we should really start doing is to acknowledge the invisible load. Start start saying it out loud, I'm the one who remembers everything. I'm the one holding everybody's emotions. I'm the one running the mental marathon. Start by making the invisible visible. Name the mental and the emotional labor that's hidden inside everyday household tasks. Not to complain, not to put the guilt on everybody, but to validate your own experience, because your own experience needs to be validated. And thirdly, let yourself feel the hollow without the shame. We often minimize the exhaustion, it's just parenting. You should be grateful for your partner, he helps. It will get easier once they're older. At least your kids are healthy. But none of these phrases, as valid as they are, validate your experience. They dismiss it. And it makes finding support even harder. Burnout is not something you should have to earn your way out of. It's a signal. It's not a flaw. You're not broken. You're just responding normally to an abnormal amount of pressure. So here's what I have to leave you with today. If you feel like a failure, you're not, you know, but because you've been handed an impossible standard and you're trying to carry all the invisible load and then you blame yourself on top of that, you're not the problem. Never. The story we've been sold about motherhood, that is the problem. And the moment we stop chasing the ghost of perfection, that's the moment when we will be happy. My house is messy 99% of the time. I live here. I don't want it picture perfect. I don't want it ready for Instagram at 3 a.m. You do need to watch your step when you go down the hallway because you might hit a Lego. That's life with children. Start to acknowledge and allow yourself to be a mom without trying to be perfect. Name the weight that you are carrying it. Accept it, acknowledge it, analyze it, and that's when the hollow will start to feel. No more tasks, no more guilt, and a lot of compassion and truth. And that's how you will get better every day. And that's how you will show up differently every day. Having compassion for yourself, acknowledging the truth that we've been sold a lie and motherhood is not perfect. Motherhood will never be perfect. And you don't need to chase everyone's expectations and you don't need to perform to some standard that somebody else has set. As long as you show up to the best of your ability, you are a good mom.